Hello Internet, this is Oleg. Welcome to another tech review. Today we're going to talk about UNIFI latest network application update, or so-called UNIFI controller, because that's how it used to be called before UNIFI started to package it nicely into separate applications. If you run in USG-Pro, that's probably the only app you're going to have. But if you run in UDM, then you might have some other applications installed on your UDM-PRO router as well. Meanwhile, let's talk about 6.2.26. This is the latest update from UNIFI. There's a lot of things to talk about, so let's dive directly into it. Alright, so first of all, 6.2.26. That's what I have right now on my controller. And let's just dive into it. Let's see what Ubiquiti created since the last update I was having, which was 6.1.31, which was not ideal. But let's see, if you just dial here on a search button, you do 6.6.26, you will see that that release was created almost 3 months ago, right? And if you go the previous one, which was 25, you will see that was created 4 months ago, and then 24, we don't have it, 23, 4 months ago as well. As you can see, progressively, Ubiquiti was creating releases for network application, which is your main controller on the Cloud Key or UBNT, UDM-PRO. Right, all of those things is basically right now called network application, which used to be just UNIFI controller. And we can see right now that previously, up to last release, we had update pretty much every month, or even more often than that. But the last update, which is 26, was 3 months ago, and since that time passed, nothing else was created yet. So that means that Ubiquiti is taking its time to basically create release which is going to be fully tested, hopefully, and with features added, the ones which we want. What's new on this release? So if you click on the notes, you will see that since 6.1.71, the earlier version of that, we have like a whole bunch of releases in between, but in major thing which we have to concentrate right now is fixing issues, basically, right? Because 6.1.71 was very contradictory update. I have a clip on that. If you can watch that, I have a link in the description. Plus, you will see the window popping up. Just click on that and you will see my review on that update. I was not happy with that update, but what it did introduce a whole bunch of new features, alpha interface, lots of new settings, which you can actually have a chance to change and experiment with those and play with those, and I did play with some of those. But in general, all the applications right now, like major thing which they fix, and this is one of those things, right? Adopted devices get to reprovision, and then it's basically reboots and reprovision again. I had that a couple times, but since that updates on the actual access point firmware, that thing didn't happen anymore. So Java versions and stuff like that. So for the Mac users, if you run your controller, you have Java 8 right now. I think there is a note for the Mac users. Yeah, so for the Mac users, we stopped building Java as of UNIFI 5.11.47. So the other thing is, which is installed and release, you have to manually install Java 8. And before the actual installing the controller, if you still run your controller on the Mac OS. I'm running that inside Cloud Key 2, and potentially I was hoping to update to UDM-PRO anytime soon, but right now UDM-PRO is out of stock, and the closest thing we can order is probably going to be December. So there is a shortage of chips and microcontrollers all around the world right now. Ubiquiti is no exclusion of that problem right now. Everybody got the same issue. Shortage of chips, put back on the back order lots of devices, plus the stocks are pretty much empty, and if you look on the most of the stuff, it's going to show you out of stock. At least for Canada, I checked, it's out of stock, and the closest one on Amazon is to be delivered somewhere in December. For this United States, its situation is much better. They have lots of stuff which is right now like UNIFI Wi-Fi 6, which is also questionable. I wanted to get my hands on that technology just to see if it's really worth it. From what I see right now, it doesn't really give you much of the boost unless you're really crazy about delivering top speed across everything pretty much in your house and all your small business, right? So for the most of the cases, Wi-Fi 5 or AC with 1.3 gigabit per second, or even below that, like for 800 megabit per second, that would be still okay. Most of the providers from the internet, if you have unlimited and fiber optic speeds, then they can give you up to 1 gig, unless you buy something like business-oriented package, which gonna cost you arm and leg. So from that perspective, getting faster inner speeds, it's questionable, right? The only concern is that UDM-PRO is capable of delivering speeds when you do even the intrusion prevention setup on your system. It will not cut off your Wi-Fi speeds. I have 1 gig coming to my house, but after I basically enabled lots of intrusion prevention, and I have separate video about that, why you should do it. You can click on the link in the description, or again, check this link in the top window corner. And that thing cut my speeds pretty much in half, right? So now instead of 1 gig, I'm basically having like 560 megabit per second. And that's still sufficient for me. I can stream multiple streams of 4Ks, no problem, but it gives me also peace of mind, because you might consider that to be kind of not for you, right? Why would I need to install intrusion prevention? If you install it and activate it and see how many people are trying to get to your systems, you will understand why, right? Especially if you have open ports which are facing internet, like websites, send mail, I don't know, SMTP, stuff like that. Anyway, so back to our release, right? So there are lots of things which are basically coming up on this release, oriented for the controllers which are running outside of USG equipment, right? Mostly you see that there is a specific fixes which are done for if you run controller on Microsoft, on Windows, if you run controller on macOS, if you run controller on Debian, all of those things got fixed, right? And not much, but still there is a work to be done, because lots of people, believe it or not, running it on the Linux or Ubuntu, or even I saw one guy was running it inside Synology on the Docker container or something. Which is, why not, right? If you have Synology and it's boosted up in memory, why do you need separate infrastructure? Your Synology is running all the time anyway, so you kind of protected from that perspective. So let's see, what else? Minimum supported devices firmware. This is important because this is for U6 series. You need to be on specific firmware, otherwise your devices will have problems adopting if you go to that controller. On top of that, there is some configuration options which are basically saying about DNS forward option. As you can see here, defined gateway JSON. I would really not recommend to mess up with config JSON file, because if each time you do something here, it's very easy to mess up, and I would just not do this altogether, right? And it's saying basically we have to add some lines into the end of the file and the options, which supposed to be pretty straightforward, but you know, people still manage to mess it up. All the other things which I have on this particular release. So if you look on my controller right here, right? So this is what I have right now. I still run the old interface. I still run my lovely dashboard, which I love a lot, right? This is one of the questions which I posted right now on the Ubiquiti website as well. This is my Nano HD, which is basically guiding pretty massive amount of drop packet. Comparing to that, what I see on my AC Pros and LR is pretty much nothing, right? So 11 drop packets on AC Pro 2. That's, I can survive, I can live with that. But this thing looks like anomaly, and I would like this to be fixed. That's why I posted question on the Ubiquiti website, on the community. So hopefully we'll get that resolved, and when we do, we're gonna get another video on that. Meanwhile, let's look on the actual interface. This is my interface, and if you want to update controller and you're running your own user, at that point, even though you may be administrator and admin rights on your user, you will not see updates for the controller. You go to the controller, you click here, and you will see that it's latest and greatest, but there is no option, like it doesn't tell you that there is a new updates available. And I was sitting there for a while waiting for the updates, and then what happened, I jumped to my new interface. I see that options. So as you can see here, on the we are currently on 6.2.26. On the system menu, on the maintenance, check for the firmware, right? And I was running here my standard Ubiquiti user, and that worked. So when you go here, it will tell you, oh, there is an update, by the way, which you have to install, or you don't have to, but it's recommended. The only problem is, which I have with Ubiquiti right now, is that they on 6.1.71, right, on the previous version which I was having, they introduced a whole bunch of features, especially on the settings. It's so-called new settings menu was also here available, and it was in the way of the drop down. Something similar to this, right? As you can see here, the menu used to be like this. So it's on a drop down and everything is plus sign, and then on the internet security, it used to be things like network scanners, and on the network scanners, even though it says alpha, right? We know for sure that Ubiquiti is introducing something as alpha, even though it's not supposed to come up, but they put here alpha at least, and you can see that. Threat management still better, that's fine. Geo IP filtering is okay as well, but these things used to be here, like network scanners and stuff like that. And on the network scanners, they used to have things like honeypot. Now, all of those things, internal threat scanner and internal honeypot, these are no longer available. So before you update to the latest 6.2.26, right, you'll have to go and clean this up. Why? Because if you don't, 6.6.26 will leave you no option to change it anymore. And I got into this kind of situation. I have my honeypot set up just for experiment, just to see what it does and how to control it, and see if I'm gonna catch any traffic like that, because it's interesting, right? But I didn't delete it before I updated, and now I have no options to change it up. I posted question on the forum, and the answer I got is that yes, UDM-PRO is the only one right now which would have that option available, but it was available for USG-Pro, and now it's not there anymore. So if you're running like USG, then before you update to 6.2.26, make sure you clean it up, because otherwise you would not have options to clean it up after, at least not on this release 6.2.26. I really hope that Ubiquiti will reopen those new settings interface. It's not a big deal for me, I'm not a big fan of that, but internet threat management, you don't see this anymore, right? So there is no honeypot set up. I have this all the customized rules and stuff, but it doesn't tell you can't do that. So this is kind of bad, right? Because they just introduced the alpha feature, and before people try to, I am pretty sure lots of us actually went in and tried. But like this is right now, we just yank it out without warning and just left it only for UDM. I understand the reason why it's going on like that, but even the same, like the geo position blocking is either or. So you either use your intrusion prevention by the specific rules, or you go and block by geo position. Here's the message, right? Geo filtering works on the USG hardware offloading must be enabled. Hardware offloading must be enabled. When threat management is enabled, hardware offloading is disabled, right? So basically saying like you can go and change these settings and do hardware offloading enable, but in that case you will lose your settings threat management control, right? Because in that case, to get these things, offloading for hardware will be disabled by default. Only one of these two features can be enabled at the time on a USG, and the reason for it is the CPU power is not simply enough to maintain geo IP filtering plus to make sure the threat management is working. right? So on UDM-PRO, most likely you can activate both at the same time. I don't have it, so I didn't check. But on USG, it's one of the two. I for now selected just to go with intrusion prevention, like threat management like that, and I'm not using GeoIP filtering. If you know for sure that GeoIP filtering is going to be much better for you, then you can change those out. You can just go ahead and enable hardware offloading, and then this will automatically disable threat management, and then you will have options to set up GeoIP. And that's things like kind of okay. You just select a country and say block. But the thing is, you might have some legitimate websites on that country which you still would like to access, and that's not gonna go through them, right? So really like that. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have for the new release, right? For the new release 6.2.26. Is it good? Do I recommend it? Well, you have options to update, but just if you careful and you account for this specific kind of features, then half of the menu just disappears on you without any warning, and you don't have any options to change anything after. Because the system is still recognize the settings of the honeypot, even though I don't have it. And it will prevent you from saving some of the settings if you have to change those, because it will tell you something like your honeypot IP is in conflict with your DHCP IP or something like that. And basically the whole thing will mess up and it will not let you save it. But in general, this release is fixing lots of stuff, especially if you're doing site-to-site VPN. So you can go ahead and update. Just be like, be knowledgeable and read the release notes and see if that's really what you need. If you're still a fan of the dashboards, which I have, then you can still run those, but for that you would need to change your interface to the old settings. So if you go to settings here, you have to go and say new user interface, uncheck that, right? And from here, you can go ahead and click on the dashboard, and it will show you the dashboard. Whatever your dashboard is default. If you want something like I have, then I have links in that video for the dashboards, which is called You Can Also Build This Dashboard. And it's pretty solid. You can customize whatever you want. As you can see, I have everything in one single pane of glass. I move all my access points for wireless 5, for Wi-Fi 5 into the range of which is not used by anybody. So this will, this is one of the hacks. If you have to change it to 108. Most of the times this channel is available. It's not used by the scanners or stuff like that, so you will not have a conflict. But most of your neighbors are not using that channel, and therefore you will not have lots of conflict on this channel. This is for 5G networks, right? For the 2.4 gigahertz, that's the only option you have, and really depends. Most of the time these are yellow or red because my neighbors are having lots of access points as well. But I'm trying to switch most of my 5G to something which is nobody's using. And you can run things like a scanner, and that will tell you that what do you have in your neighborhood. I'm using Wi-Fi Explorer. As you can see here, Wi-Fi Explorer is basically showing you pretty much everything around your neighborhood, what your system see, without need for you to go ahead and set this up from the settings on the UNIFI. Because if you run this test to see who is using the channels on the UNIFI itself, on the controller for specific Wi-Fi access point, then it will disable that access point for the time of test. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. But in most of the cases, you would like to maintain your connectivity, and that would not be possible if you run it from here, right? If you go here, go to your devices, click on any of the access points, and inside the tools, you will have that option to scan, right? If you scan 5G or 2G, it will block that range for that particular access point. So all the clients which are using that will be disconnected and migrated to the other surviving access points, which is fine, but just tedious, right? It's much easier to use tools from outside and then get this scanned and connected. That's it guys for today's review. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for staying with me till the end of this video. If you like this video, you know what to do. Do your normal YouTube stuff like share, subscribe, click notification bell. So we have in plan to release another video about my new infrastructure which I'm building downstairs. This is massive update. I relocated all my network equipment, recabled pretty much everything, put it in a nice package with a rack. So it's looking pretty nice and it's neat and very organized right now. So that's how the things are supposed to be in the first place, but you know, cable management is always a problem. So if you'd like to see that video, make sure your notification bell is on because I'm about to release it maybe this week. Because it's already in production, all the videos are already shot. Some of them are maybe will be corrected and reshot again, but most of the material is already in place. So that would be just time right now is required to assemble it all together in a Final Cut Pro and make a final video for your review. So I hope you guys will see that video very soon, and I'll see you there in a bit. Alright, till next time, I'll see you around. Peace.